We seek an agreement that gives businesses and investors the certainty that the global economy is on a firm path towards a low-carbon future, because that will spur the kind of investment that will be vital to combine reduced emissions with economic growth. And that's the goal, not just an agreement to roll back the pollution that threatens our planet, but an agreement that helps our economies grow and our people to thrive without condemning the next generation to a planet that is beyond its capacity to repair.
While President Obama makes empty speeches in Paris, the world's air gets a lot dirtier. And despite his need for self-flagellation in front of other world leaders and lemmings, it's not America fouling the air to the point of people potentially dropping dead just by walking outside. According to the World Health Organization, an air quality index of 100 is considered to be unhealthy. If it hits 300, it would trigger a health warning of emergency conditions here in America. At the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China, yesterday, the number recorded was 611, a reading that indicates decreased lung function, irregular heartbeats, and premature death. This in a nation where the government refuses to acknowledge there's a problem, where the manufacturing we send them is part of increasing the belching output of toxic fumes, and where that government laughs in ours and the world's faces because no one's doing anything to even try to bring them into line. So let's cut through this unbreathable air, shall we? Our guest was Deputy Assistant U.S. Attorney General in the Office of Legal Counsel during the George W. Bush administration. Now Professor of Law at the University of California, Berkeley. Welcome John Yoo to the show. Professor Yoo, thank you so much for joining us. And let me begin by maybe being a little bit flippant, but maybe being right on point here. When the president speaks, as he did in Paris, about what is happening around the globe and about what America to do, is he belching pretty much the same sort of toxic smoke that they're belching out of the factories in China?
Well, maybe we can say when the president is saying the words we just heard, he's smoking something. I don't know what it is, but it's clearly giving him delusions, because there's no way that the president can make any significant promises of the kind that he's hoping for unless he brings along the United States Senate or the Congress, both of which are, the majorities of which oppose any kind of serious cuts in greenhouse gas emissions.
Then what is he hoping to gain here, instead of just having us talk about him and have people who follow him blindly think that he's a wonderful leader? What else is there to gain?
Well, I think he thinks that this is going to be one of his major foreign policy legacies. And as he sees his national security and foreign policy agenda collapsing all around the United States, I think he's grasping for this one thing, which he's always promised since the 2008 campaign, to try to, if you remember, stop the seas from rising, to end climate change, and so on. And he and the United States, he's put the United States prestige on the line to try to push for an agreement to do all kinds of things which he, as president, is not allowed to do by himself.
Now, let's talk about that agreement, if I can, for a moment here,
yes,
because he needs approval of 2/3 of the Senate. It won't happen. He can promise all he wants, but this still has to go through lawmakers. Now, here's the EU's chief negotiator saying there is no plan B, nothing to follow. This is not just ongoing UN discussions. Paris is final. Quite frankly, Professor, that's a crock, isn't it?
There is no way that Paris can be final for the United States. The United States is not giving up its sovereignty the way the European countries have done to the European Union. If the U.S. is going to cut emission standards or limit them, if it's going to transfer money to other countries to help them put technology into effect to reduce pollution, the United States Congress is the one that controls the purse. The United States Senate is the one that approves treaties. The President Obama, can only make a promise that lasts as long as his time left in office, and only in the areas that he himself controls by himself. So it's really just trying to claim a victory now, kicking the can to the next president, who could terminate any agreement President Obama signs.
Kicking the can. All right, 1 minute I have left here. A New York Times CBS News poll: 2/3 of Americans support the United States joining an international treaty to limit the impact on global warming. That's fine. America being involved. We should be involved. But as I mentioned at the beginning, isn't it fair to say that if you're really going to try to clean up the earth, go after China, go after India, you've got to put some sort of political pressure, economic pressure on them, because otherwise they are laughing in our face and they just aren't going to do anything. They are the real killers, much more than Americans. Yes?
Yes, and this is why the past efforts in Kyoto and Copenhagen failed, because you didn't have the larger producers of pollution on board. China has not ever signed on to any of these agreements. India is not going to sign. None of these countries which are developing are going to sign any meaningful limits. How is the United States going to force them to obey cuts that that President Obama wants the United States itself to sign on to?
But we do need, very briefly, we've got to be a part of it, but we can be a part of the solution. All we have to do is have, oh my goodness, there's that word, leadership.
Yes. This is a kind of leadership we used to have in our country and many countries expect of America, but which we can't provide now and haven't for years, unfortunately.
And what is the real big deal is if you're going to go ahead and get something done, you got to go after the criminals. And the criminals, when it comes down to what's happening in air around the world, are the Chinese, and we don't do it. Professor John Yoo, want to thank you so much for your expertise. We'll look forward to speaking to you again. Now, is the Donald guilty of political extortion, or, come on, he's just kidding? That's coming up next, right here on The Hardline.